Thank you everybody for joining today. A lot of material here, but we'll move through it pretty briskly. We will have some time for questions. This is a scenario-based approach to delivering value through business architecture. The question came up when I presented last year. Okay, so that's business architecture. People were asking, how do I make it real for the business people that I work with? So we have four main topics today. What are some of the challenges in explaining business architecture to the masses? Somebody asked a question at a summit last week of, have you ever tried to explain it over dinner to your family? Yes. Scenario-based approach, making it consumable. And then we've got a scenario we're going to walk through. It's a manufacturing one. If you haven't worked in manufacturing, that's okay. And then we're going to go through what's behind the scenes, the part that you do not show the business professionals and some of the practitioners about the knowledge base. And that's going to lead right into Charles's discussion, where he's going to wrap up at the end talking about a little bit more about the underlying technology. So some of the challenges that we face in explaining business architecture, and we've all probably gotten those blank stares, but it represents a holistic abstraction of what an organization does, its vocabulary, and how it delivers stakeholder value. Okay, at the high level, it sounds reasonable. What do we do, and how do we deliver value? On the whole, what some of the challenges are that people today, for whatever reason, and I think this has evolved over the decades, we tend to gravitate to the how versus the what. And people find themselves uncomfortable with staying with the what versus the how. The challenge you run into there is when you go to the how things are being done, right? We shouldn't necessarily assume that that's how they're going to be done tomorrow, or that every part of the organization does it the same way. We find that out with like many duplicate processes of the same process. So it's a shifting of a mindset from a process flow-based mindset, right, down in the weeds, to a stakeholder value and business object-based capability mindset. I'm going to give you a little more background on that. I think the models at the end will hopefully clarify that a little bit further. But it's that shift in thinking. And that shift in thinking requires some communication. One is focus on simple statements for the executives, like business architecture enables effective, streamlined strategy execution, right? Ask them how many of their strategies went through successfully over the past year and the year before that, and the year before that. Industry stats don't show a real good track record there. Highlighting the fact that most organizations do struggle with stated strategies, and then examine how best to shift away from initiatives that are late, under-delivered, over budget, and or fail completely. When I always ask people that I work with, clients and training groups, how many projects have you been in? What percentage have fallen into one of these four or all of these four categories? I've gotten answers like everyone I've ever worked on, every project I've ever worked on over the last 25 years have fallen into this category. So that's sort of routine. Practically speaking, business architects and practitioners must make it real. We need to use their language, not our language, right? And we don't need to keep showing capability maps to executives. That is like faux pas number one. And apply a scenario-based approach. Talk to them about their issues. What are the challenges they're facing, and how do we deal with those using business architecture? So we're going to use a business scenario concept to do that. And just a quick overview of what that is as we go in here. Business architecture scenarios provide a situational context for leveraging business architecture to address a given situation, a need, or a business goal, and they can vary dramatically in scope and size. So they really fall into two broad categories, and there's some gray areas on some, but there's essentially strategic scenarios. Think of, for example, a merger or an acquisition. That's a pretty strategic high level. Lots of things going on there, right? But it's still a story and it's still a context, and you can still use business architecture. Or the more tactical kind, right? So strategic scenarios are characterized by broad ecosystem coverage. They can span multiple business units, value streams, initiatives over a period of time. Tactical scenarios, on the other hand, are characterized by a more limited scope. They're more constrained to one or a few value streams, there are more targeted objectives. So I want to do this and maybe one or two or three objectives, right? A more narrowed scope, much tighter context, right? So that could be typically addressed in one initiative, although that initiative probably breaks down. Think of initiatives as programs, projects, phases, sprints, et cetera. Those are all initiatives, right? So you can break those down into more detail. So let's take a look at one of those scenarios. And again, we'll have a break point after this section to talk about it before we jump into the next section. So the typical scenario breakdown, and this is from a sort of a standard, very, very high outline, obviously, of how scenarios are explained at the Business Architecture Guild. And what the Business Architecture Guild does is it's got a number of teams, I think 10 now, that focus on different industry sectors, healthcare, financial services, manufacturing, transportation, and so forth. So each of those teams have produced reference models, and those reference models are great as a starting point for your business architecture in-house. However, there's no guidebook with it, right? So the companion guides that are being produced will have some different sections overviewing the model, but what essentially you're going to get with those eventually, as they get published, are scenarios that have background, the value focus, the capability focus, the information focus, and then talks about pain points and opportunities, and then more of a solution. So we're going to go through one here today. We're going to take an example of a manufacturing company that is seeking production cycle time reduction. They want to do that because the operations manager is concerned in uptick in customer demands at the same time as a shortfall in production flow. They can't produce enough product to deliver to their customers who have already paid for those types of things. And they're getting customer order backlogs. They can't deliver to the custom products to the customer, and that becomes a real issue because maybe the customer will go somewhere else. The company's strategic objective at a high level is to reduce production cycle time, to improve material management and work management automation. Those are more of the courses of action that they want to pursue. So the manufacturing plant in this case, and there's one, we'll keep it simple, appeared to have several improvement opportunities that were highlighted and compared to where the pain points were. So the operations manager engages the business architect seeking to find ways to reduce production cycle times for high demand products with low production rates. Now, that means we don't put a lot of product out, but when we do put product out, right, they're in high demand by our customers that we do have. Companies that are in manufacturing that do produce, by the spec, right? So there's specific spec that they're sort of on one end of that spectrum. But other ones where you're selling some large types of things that were, again, not high volume, like very large, heavy, specialized equipment or something like that. So you have to be able to produce these and deliver them in a timely manner. And that's not happening. So the business begins where the conversation begins where most scenarios should begin, investigating why value delivery to the operations manager and ultimately the customer, why that's all falling short. So let's take a quick look at where we start. So one of the most important perspectives on business architecture that you want to start with is not the capability, it's the value stream. Why do we start there? Because it gives us the big picture. So in this example, we have a value stream called manufactured product. Seems pretty straightforward, right? And in there, we've got 5 stages. The value stream stages are very formal types of things. They're architecturally crafted. They've got clear delineation points where you can exit and enter those, and they produce value items, right? So what's happening? Well, we initiate the production cycle in the first one. Material is ready for product assembly or processing, and you do use material along the way. The product is assembled or processed. The product is packaged for market, and the product's now available, and we're going to ship it out to the customer. So our goal here is at the end to produce an assembled to requirements, a product assembled to requirements on time. We want to know where these issues are, and we're going to use the value stream as the pinpointing of the issues. Now, a note, in a more fulsome scenario, if we were going to really expand this discussion, we might show parallel value streams. Parallel value streams are another way that business architecture simplifies, right? So if somebody says, you know what, the machine broke down that we're using to make this part or to fabricate this part, we need to replace that, right? So we need to initiate a deploy asset where we've got the part in stock, but we need to put it in there to fix it. Or we've run out of material, so we need to buy some, right? So we go off and acquire material. Those are separate value streams. Why? Because they have separate value propositions. As a business architect, the delineation point is not flow. It's the uniqueness and standalone nature of the value propositions you're delivering. Execute operation is basically just keeping the factory around all of this working, okay? So you've got parallel value streams. We're leaving them out of the discussion today to simplify the conversation, but we could incorporate those into the overall picture, especially if, right, material's not available or some other kinds of things are happening. So just to keep that in mind, the typical scenario might have one, but it might have one or two or three value streams in it. Now, the business architect sitting there, and they may not be that familiar with what's exactly happening during this particular value stream, but they've got the business architecture, and there's been some work done where the 5 stages on the left-hand side were broken out into a little more detail. You can see here that each stage, initiate manufacturing cycle, prepare materials, make product, and so forth, has a stage-based description. We want to create a scenario, sort of a narrower scenario-specific description. So when we look at this, we say prepare materials, right? We say these activities, pacing, final readiness to make the product, including movement and validation of materials, or in packaging, right? We say that we want to package to the order to the spec, right? So there's a little more scenario context in here that helps the business architect. They're going to talk to the operations manager and get context for that. There's some other vital elements here that we need to look at. So these columns could be in any sequence. I'll take capabilities first because people are usually familiar with those. These are the capabilities, we'll call them key capabilities. They're not the only capabilities that are enabling each of these value stream stages. So you can see things like operation management, because we have to make sure the lights are still on. Asset management, we have to make the machinery working and the conveyors and so forth. Product management, that's the thing being created. Work management is obviously work, material, and so forth. And schedule is very important. Now, because we're managing all those things, we have some corresponding information that we need. So we have to have clear information on material, schedules, work, product, asset, operation, right? Over to the far right, and this is really important at this stage, we have our stakeholders. Who are some of the key players? Not all of them, right? We may have some other people working in each of these, but at each stage, there's some key players. The operations manager, of course. The product assembler, yes. The quality reviewer, yes. The inventory controller, yes. So at each point, the product packager and so forth. So at each point, we've got these different individuals, these different stakeholders. The baseline of a business architecture essentially has everything in this picture, although the information concepts may not be clear until you go to the capabilities, and the scenario-specific context wouldn't be there. But certainly for columns 1, 2, and then the last 2 columns, for sure you would see those, and it's a quick trip to figure out the information concepts. So that's your baseline business architecture. That's already there, right? So why do we care so much about all these things? Because it's going to give us context. Because any of those capabilities are not working well, what we're going to be able to do is go in and say, we need to address this and fix it and straighten it out. We'll see what that looks like in a few slides. All right, so that's the point that we're working on here. Now, why do we care about stakeholders and who's doing what inside of here? Because we're going to talk to all of them, because we want to get a full perspective on what's going on at each stage. And, there's a lot of telephone tag or the old game of telephone when you were a kid and you go around in a circle and you come up with a different answer. Too much go between, right? So the business architect, along with anybody else that needs to be engaged, operations manager, whoever else, is going to sit down and meet with operations manager, product manager, inventory controller, product assembler, quality reviewer, product packager, and the customer manager. If there's anybody else that needs to be on that list, they will tell us, right? That's sort of the bottom part. When you meet with people, the last question you always have is there anyone else that you would recommend that I talk to get a better context for this, right? Now, none of this, a lot of times we do these interviews and it goes into a notepad and maybe it goes into a PowerPoint and then it goes up in smoke. What's going to happen here is we're going to keep track of this information and we can document it. And I'm not showing you all the templates for that, but business architecture has a way of documenting these things and tracking them as a design concept or planning concept. So this is the pre-work, the discovery work, right? We're not building anything yet because we don't know what all is wrong. We're doing the deep dive to figure out exactly where the pain points are, what the opportunities are, where those exist, and how we want to go after those. So we're going to have those meetings. We're going to track those down. If we need to expand the conversations, we'll expand them. All of this is in prep before we even start thinking about a solution, right? You can't just jump to a solution. You got to do the analysis. Now, this is a visual of the top, a select subset of capabilities that enable the value stream stages that we've been talking about. I say a select subset because usually there's a lot more utilitarian supporting capabilities and others, right? So this is a subset, and even at the next level down, it's a subset. So we say that only a select number of level ones. Level ones are in the light boxes. The level twos are down below that in the darker boxes are shown, but these are the ones we want to focus on here. Why do we care about this? Because the value stream, capability to value stream stage cross mapping is the number one most important blueprint you will have working in business architecture to do issue analysis and related initiative planning, solution planning, right? Because that's the focal point. The focal point is not the giant capability map with 2,000 capabilities. It's the value stream and the specific enabling capabilities that are cross-mapped to each of these stages. That's the narrowing. That's the zooming in. And that's why you need value streams in your business architecture. And I'm not talking about Lean Six Sigma value streams. I am not talking about Agile value streams. I am talking about well-formed business architecture, the true value-based, value-structured value streams, of which, as a manufacturing company, you might have 30-ish or 35, not a whole lot more than that, and they will be global across the enterprise. Now, what's another conversation you want to have? And by the way, this is something you can show to people, right? With the people who are involved and engaged. If you want to use this as a visual when you're having your conversations with your business team, right? You say, this is where you prepare the materials, right? Right. This is where you make the product. That doesn't mean we don't have material management in stage 3, right? That doesn't mean we're still not working with materials in stage 3. To stage 2, just make sure that you're set up for it. Now you go to stage 3. Now you're building, and there's material replacement, and there's a whole bunch of other things going on during that assembly cycle. And this, by the way, works for either assembled products or blended products like paints and chemicals and things like that. So the reason you have this picture is it's a simplified view. It keeps the thing simple. Speaking of simplified views, I want to talk about the information being used, because a lot of times things that don't work in a business have to do with inadequate or unreliable or low integrity information. So what we want to do is know exactly what information. This is a subset. It's a selected information concept subset. So I'm not showing you things like order item, for example, under order. I'm not showing you, for example, a shipment item under shipment, or I'm not showing you schedule element under schedule. Again, it's a subset, keeping it simple for the discussion purposes. But what we did here is we drew this out. And the way we do this is we can do it a couple different ways. You can bring the picture to your business folks, or you can sit with the business team and re-verify and re-verify and re-verify these conversations. And you can do this. We've done this on big whiteboards in front of the business team and say, okay, you got a product you want to make. That's over here. Right. You've got material that goes into the product. Right. That's over to the left up here. You've got an order for the product. Right. That's down here and that's connected. Right. The order is connected to an agreement and it's for a particular customer. Correct. And there'll be a shipment of the product for that order. Correct. You go through that workflow, or not workflow, but discussion. And as you go through that, what's going to happen is they're going to go, yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. No, let me fix this. No, let's see. No, we have one of these. Oh, that's one of those. Okay, good. We're not showing the trucks in here and what we're delivering it in, and that's fine. So all of these things are happening, right? All of these things are what we call information concepts in business architecture. We just call them information when we're talking to the business people because that's pretty straightforward, right? But this information gives you the context for what you're going to do later in terms of data architecture and creating a data-oriented aspect of your solution, right? So as you go through this, you can start to see, all right, this is all important information. If any of this is fragmented, low integrity, not available, highly redundant, unreliable, you add your items to the list, that becomes a problem for the business to be able to do what it needs to do. Now we're going to go, we talked to the business stakeholders, and we're going to surface some pain points, right? We know what information's in use. We've got that formalized through the prior slide. We know what capabilities are involved. We've discussed that a little bit more with the slide before that. We've met with the stakeholders 3 slides back. The stakeholders have shared with us the pain points, right? So this is what we want, that clarity to move forward to say, all right, what can we narrow down as the real gaps in here, right? So the material plan, a keyword, right? So you want, as a business architect, you want to go through here, and when people are talking, keywords need to jump off the page at you, right? So plan, got it, right? Got to know plan, that's an information concept. There's something wrong with it, right? Production plan, oh, interesting. Develop manually translates probably to work, but we'll get back to that later, right? The manual processes added to the work management queue and cycle time for the ordering and receipt of materials. There's an issue with it, right? They're complex, they are not defined well, and they are not automated, right? So work management is an umbrella capability for work queues, work items, and so on. And that umbrella capability essentially defines how work is being done, what tasks are assigned to which people, where they're prioritized, where they're queued, and what those tasks are tied to in terms of state. So we've got some other indicators over here. We've got a capability gap with material inventory management and work management. And then each functional group manages its own schedule. Oh, there's another keyword, right? Schedule management and work queue, making it hard to figure out what comes next, right? So we've done a preliminary pain point capability gap. We need to do a little more. We're not done yet, right? So what we're going to do now is sort of highlight in red. And in my experience, having presented these to a lot of senior people, they sort of get that, right? Red's bad, yellow's not as bad, but it's not good. The rest of it we could say was pretty normal and working okay. But basically, we're going to leave it to the fact that, that we're focusing on these areas. So under each stage, where you see a red capability like schedule management or plan development or material assembly, it means that those capabilities are underperforming. We will find out why, because we're going to connect those to the information that is problematic. But we'll do a little more analysis on each of these as we go. The capability gap highlighted a number of these capabilities that were at issue, right? And so we've highlighted at each stage where we think these issues are, and what we want to do is have a plan to correct those issues, right? So we have things like the make product stage, which involves work management, material assembly, schedule management. We got a problem there, right? That we need to address and fix. The value stream value proposition overall isn't being delivered. We're not getting the product out to spec on time. So the customer's waiting and waiting and waiting, and it's just taking too long. We have lots of that with lots of customers that we work with. All right, so now we're going to try to put a little more of this together. We're going to bring it out to we're going to bring it to the pain point. We're going to try and tie it back to this opportunity, which we want to tie back to our business objectives, right? If we can. We're going to look at addressing the capability gap, and then we want to look at how we want to address that capability gap. Now, we haven't gone into the IT stuff yet, so I've got a note down here. We'll talk about that for a second, right? So the pain point here is same as we had earlier, and then we're looking at the opportunities, right? So the opportunity here in the first one is to integrate material and operation plans. So right now we've got different plans that don't sync up. So can we have one integrated plan? Plan management is dramatically underperforming. So we don't have a good plan. We'll get to schedule in a minute, but there's issues with schedules as well, right? So integrated data architecture and automation is probably what we need. Right now, all the data is scattered. In some cases, the data isn't captured automatically at all. There's no electronic data that we can work with. In other cases, it's scattered across different locations. So we know that there's information issues there. We've highlighted that to the far right. We know that there's some plan development and material assembly. We need automation for that as well. So we need to make those things better. We want to break down silos. This is the second one, and implement a cross-functional team that can work towards a common outcome. Right now, people are siloed. They're working independently. There's no good automation again. So part of this is organizational. They also want to pursue information automation integration to further decrease cycle time, right? So areas here are a lack of coordinated work, issues with material inventory management. What we want to look there is better provisioning of high integrity, integrated, well-aligned information, right? With that goes the automation, so new data or better data, retooled, restructured, re-architected data, and redesigned automation that's integrated across different teams. Organizationally, we're going to have to align, right? There's some alignment that has to change potentially. So we may make organizational changes. Work management, we don't have clarity of the work management and how that's being done. We need to rework that, redefine that. And there is an approach, not getting into today, that's used that ties directly to business architecture, pardon me, that's called dynamic rules-based routing. It is an alternative to business process modeling. If you are a Business Architecture Guild member, it is in the BizBot guide. It's called dynamic rules-based routing. And dynamic rules-based routing is what we would use to take it from the architecture into the work management design and then into the automation. So that's sort of the tail hanging off of here. I'm not getting into it today just based on timing, right? And the third area is implement a cross-functional team. We talked about that with one schedule. Schedule management's an issue, right? So we need to have much better, more formalized schedule management. Again, work management is another area, and automation. So across the board, the automation we have is either missing, inadequate. The information we have is splintered, low integrity, and redundant, and in some cases not there at all. And how we manage work management is redundant, splintered, and its process flows across different business areas, meaning that it's redundant and not synchronized and not optimized. So those are the areas we want to focus on. That's all the prep work. That's the analysis we do going in. You can do these assessments very quickly if you're a skilled business architect and you've got a baseline business architecture. You're not building it as you go. You've got a baseline sitting there, right? The Business Architecture Guild has reference models that members can use. They're free to them. But what I want to do here is, before I go into the next section, open it up, Charles, for some questions, and then I'll jump to the knowledge-based discussion before I hand it back to you.
Yeah, there aren't too many questions on the forum so far. There was one earlier that we've been addressing around can process mining tools assist in value stream analysis? Assuming you know the value stream, would process mining tools help you understand where delays, complexities are?
I can answer that. That's like saying I want to build a castle on this lakeshore, and I'm going to do it by counting every grain of sand that's laying out there independently, right? I've got and examine every grain of sand while I do it. Bottom-up approaches to building value streams, I'm going to tell you right now, very frankly, does not work. Processes are fragments of how things are being done that were developed at a point in time by one or another area. They do not provide insights into value-based mapping. There are formal techniques for doing top-down value-based mapping. There are reference models that will jumpstart you and get you going. I do understand that value mapping is not something that necessarily comes natural to a lot of people. But the BizBot guide tells you how, the reference models tell you what they look like. And, I would go from that point down, but building up bottom up process mining, you can do that later as an analysis step. But I can tell you that there's going to be, the data is going to be at such a low level, and the process itself is going to be at a how, not a what level. That is going to be very difficult to come to any conclusion. If you want to do it later for, as you're going through your transformational analysis and deployments, you certainly can do that. And I would encourage, if you need to do that, to do that. But it is not something you want to use to build out your architecture. That is a top-down exercise.
I'll just open it quickly. Are there any other quick questions before he moves on to the next session? Okay, Bill.
All right.
Go on.
All right. Let's talk about, all right, now we're going to leave the business folks there for a moment, and we're going to talk about architectural elements that go into what I just talked about, the things you should have or you should eventually get around to having that are going to set you up for being able to actually be able to do the things I was talking about. So let me start with the most simple perspective. This comes right out of part 1 of the BizBot guide, a guide to the business architecture body of knowledge. And this is a business architecture framework. In the middle, you'll see the 10 domains. You'll note that capability is one of the 10 domains, right? So that's an important thing to bear in mind. There are value streams, information, and organization. All of those are highly relevant. The other things around it are the expanded business architecture. So these 10 domains comprise the business architecture. We're not going to get into a whole lot of detail on that right now, but if you need to look up and learn about business architecture, you can join the guild and get the BizBot to learn. What goes into, or what comes out of the knowledge base, which is the capturing of essentially a representation of our organization, is business blueprints, our business blueprints. Blueprints are what blueprints am I talking about? Well, the cross mapping that I showed earlier, for example, or the relationship model of the information concepts, those are blueprints. Those are blueprints that come out of the knowledge base, depending on what tools you've got. Why did I pick those two? Because I was in a particular scenario that demanded those two, right? If I'm doing a merger or an acquisition, I'm going to use a business unit to capability cross mapping, totally different blueprint, totally, different domains and so forth. So the blueprints you get out of the knowledge base need to be dictated by the scenario. So you need to have a tremendous amount of flexibility to get those blueprints out. Underneath the covers of the framework is the knowledge base. That was a centerpiece, right? Underneath there is a meta model. Right. So I'll give you a little more on this as we go. But the Business Architecture Guild has a meta model. It's published in a white paper. I think I've got that reference on the next slide or two. So you'll see a reference for that. This is a representation of the relationships at a very top level. Now, if you break these down, as the Guild does in several white papers, and the BizBot guide does the same. Basically, you're going below the covers here. So you're going to have the blue ones are capability, the value items, the value streams are the orange ones. This other color of orange is organization and so forth, right? Strategy, there's more pieces to strategy. So if you go down a level underneath this sort of high level snapshot, you're going to see other things, capability instances, capability behaviors, things like that, right? So there's a lot more detail here, a lot more rigor, right? So don't let the top level sort of throw you off, but that's sort of the top level. What do we do with that is we want to be able to draw these different blueprints. These are some sort of de facto, easy to get blueprints, capabilities, information maps, value streams, cross mappings we talked about earlier. So you can go to and get some of this detail out of here pretty quickly. So what I'm saying here at the top is fully deploying and scaling a business architecture requires a knowledge base of some sort, right? Excel isn't going to cut it. at the end of the day, right? You can start with Excel, that's fine, but it's not going to work for you tool-wise. So you need to graduate into tooling. And that tooling has to have some degree of alignment or conformance to either the guild meta model, which I'm showing you down here to the far left, and I'll show you some more in a minute, or there's an industry standard from the Object Management Group, the OMG, and it's called the Business Architecture Core Model, or for short, BACM. Down here at the bottom is the Core Meta Model 1.0. You can go to omg.org/spec/BACM, and you can find it. It is an open industry standard. It largely mirrors the guild meta model because it was built by people who understood the guild and they wanted to formalize it. But it was built by a committee of like 10 companies. So, it's not an exact match, but it largely mirrors it. It is an implementable meta model. The guild is in a white paper. This one is implementable. So back to the high level picture, and I'll give you a wrap up here in a second. Back to the high level picture of the domain relationships. Let me add a couple things on. If I want to extend it to a full knowledge base, I can do a couple different things, and the guild provides different extension perspectives, mapping perspectives for each of these. On the left-hand side, everything over here to the left are examples of what are things you might want to connect to business architecture. You've got requirements. You see over here that there's a requirement, and it's connected to a whole bunch of the things that are in the main meta model. And you can see behavior, capability, behavior, and instance, which are very important if you're doing requirements analysis. You should understand the instance context if you're doing a business requirement. Customer journey maps, right? How do we tie customer journeys? Customer journeys on the left-hand side here in green. The business architecture is on the, right-hand side. Business architecture is on the left-hand side. You can see we're connecting value streams over here to the customer journeys and journey stages, right? We've got touch points and so forth. Processes, very similar. Although I will say that if you're going to map any processes to business architecture, do it with a very well-bounded thought process, because you can get fairly granular and there's a lot of detail there. You don't want to spend all your time meta modeling or modeling. To the right-hand side is the IT pieces. To the top are the software service relationships. This is in the BizBox guide. The ones on the left are in this white paper down below. This other picture here is sort of a portfolio view of business architecture and application systems and data. And down here to the bottom is another view, which I provided here for the conversation, of how data connects to information. So that's another view. So these are the sort of extended knowledge base. What you want over time is to have that captured. So it's not like tribal knowledge, or it's not like, this consultant brought in these PowerPoints and that's what we used for a while and those are gone now, so we got to do this over. And then another consultant comes in. This is your knowledge base. It becomes permanent for you, right? It needs to be persisted. It needs to be accessible. And it needs to be expandable based on your practice needs. And if you get into the IT architecture, you need the stuff on the right. Okay. Let me summarize. So business professionals and even IT practitioners have found business architecture to be a bit of a mystery. It's the sort of value centricity, which certainly, in my experience, can throw people for a bit of a loop. It's the concept of object-based, and I was talking to this client this week who veered off the object-based approach, right, to capability and information mapping. All capabilities are based on a well-defined, non-overlapping, discrete business object, right? That means we have one term and one definition for a thing that I work with in my business. On average, depending on the complexity of your business model, your capability map and or your information map, and they're basically mirrors of each other, right? The information concepts are based on the same business objects as capabilities. You've got around, ballparking it, 60 to 80 business objects in your organization. Somebody might say, that's a low number, right? Well, we roll things up. We can do typing and subtyping, so there's all kinds of things you can do with that. But the bottom line is, if you highly rationalize and stream and define those business objects, and you look fairly completely across your organization, and these count sort of the lower level details as well, you're going to have around 60 to 80. So while the underlying business and related architectures require rigor and the things we just looked at in that last section, and formal automation, the practitioner needs to have more, we'll call them soft views, more business-friendly views. And that's what the scenarios do. They provide business friendliness. I recommend if you're looking at using a business architecture to solve issues, that you use something along the lines of that format that I just shared, right? And business architects need the skills. They need both the hard skills on that last section, that understanding how all the pieces fit together and how you can get to them and how you can frame them and how you can expand them and refine them, and the softer skills of having communication with the business community, right? Not every business architect has that full set of skills. That's fine. But if you have a team, you may have people that specialize in working with the business community, right? And I'm not talking about working business analysts. I'm talking about working with the people on the front lines. I'm not talking about talking to a manager. I'm talking about talking, that example I was showing you earlier, I'm talking about people who are assembling the products. I'm talking to you about going directly to the people that are engaged in the work on a daily basis. Because every level up in management you go to, asking them questions, or every arm's length you go to, having a go-between, you're going to lose vital information of what's really going on, right? Those are the people that you're going to learn from. By the way, your business architecture, as you do this work, it can get more granular, it can get more accurate. You will have a continuous refinement that you're performing. So focus on scenarios, see if that can work for you, and at this point, I'll turn it back over to Charles, and he's got some more information to provide, and then we'll talk some more.
Any last quick questions for Bill?
Join the Business Architecture Guild.
What's that?
I told them to join the Business Architecture Guild.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have a personal membership, and it actually just renewed this week. So kind of fun that I'm working with you during the week that my membership renews.
Corporate memberships as well, if you have groups of people of 25, 50, 75. So there's a number of companies and organizations around the world that have these corporate memberships. It just makes it easier if you have a whole bunch of people in your company that are doing business architecture work, and they need they need access to this material. There is a corporate membership, and then you can have your administrator just add people to that.
Okay, I'm going to jump to the next topic here. So let me get my screen shared out here. So first of all, let me reintroduce myself a bit here. So I'm Charles Bartley. I've been one of the co-hosts of this forum for the last couple of years with John. John's definitely the heart and soul of it, but I've been working behind the scenes in a couple of presentations here. I'm in the middle of switching jobs from being a part of our EA sales team to being the outbound product manager for our EA tool. So this is actually one of my very first duties in my brand new position with ServiceNow. And what I'm going to talk to you about quickly is where we're going with the EA tool with regards to some short-term business architecture capabilities, and then also just some of the personal things that I care about and that I'm bringing to the new EA tool. So first off, I'm going to be showing you some items here that are forward-looking, so all the safe harbor applies. Don't make buying decisions. User interfaces and functionality and timing and all of that can change. You've all seen versions of this. We're not going to be terribly markety here, and most of the stuff I'm showing you is fairly short runway before we deliver it. So the first thing you probably know, we've switched from being application portfolio management, which was the old name for the app, highly focused on applications, highly focused on technical stack. We've renamed that to be enterprise architecture. So we're trying to get into the bigger picture of actual architecture, not just the technical focused and application focused lanes we were previously. I'm not going to drain this slide, but here on the left, these have been the traditional capabilities that we've had lined up against the different TOGAF application, business, information, technology. In the business arena, we've been pretty slight in the past. We've had data around, like for the last year or two, we've had tables in ServiceNow around value streams, and we've had business capabilities for a while, but they're kind of considered black arts of the platform. Like people struggle with what business capabilities are and the value streams. We really just had the tables and some basic forms. We didn't have anything that did anything with it. So that's starting to change. I'm going to blow out the rest of the slide. It's just showing how we connect what EA, the app, does to the rest of the platform in operations, risk, security, service management, portfolio, etc. I want to focus on the parts that are business architecture specific. So capability modeling, and you can see, I believe this is a mock-up of this. I was really hoping to be able to do a little bit of live demo, but with me being brand new in the job, I hadn't quite figured out how to get that organized in time for this. So we're working as a part of the enterprise architecture workbench to enable you to map your business capabilities in a hierarchy, be able to talk about, you can see here, Buy It and Logiman. These are apps that are working with that business capability, or they're part of the contribution of that business capability. We're working at making it much better user experience as far as adding and removing, update, rearranging your business capabilities, analyzing those capabilities for gaps, and then creating plans to resolve those gaps. So that was already released back in November of last year, I believe through a store app. The rest of these are forward-looking. So in value stream modeling, as you probably know, the big reason for changing in our tool into the EA space in name is we're adding modeling capabilities. And so one of those capabilities is around actually modeling the value streams. You can see here, order to cash, their stages, order management, credit management, and then the capabilities and processes that are contributing to those value stream stages. So I've seen a couple of different mock-ups of this. This is one that we're using in our official deck. I've been able to play with another one that looks a little bit different. This is targeted in our May release. I'm really excited as I'm joining the team to get deeper in this, because value streams and capabilities to me are some of those critical business architecture components that make sense of the rest of CSDM. They provide that context and why does it matter and what's it doing for the business. So I love being able to actually manipulate these in the tool, not just have a record in a table for it.
Hey, Charles,
Yeah.
before you move on, go back a slide. So right now, we can go from value stream to value stage into the business capabilities, but then when you go back and try to go from value stream to value stage, then to business process, you can define the business process, but there's no place to put any steps. How do we find out when that's going to be on the roadmap?
You mean individual steps in the process?
Yeah, there's no table there, believe it or not. I know there's this, right?
Yeah.
But this
So
doesn't map back to that table yet. So
I don't know
just
the direct answer to that. So please put it in the chat.
understood.
I'll take it back. But where we're headed with,
Oh, Mark just
I'm
answered. Mark answered. It's
beautiful.
coming. Thanks, Mark.
Yeah. So the next item on the roadmap, again targeted towards May, is being able to actually model those business processes in business process modeling notation, and have those in platform. And this is an area that I think, like, step one is get it modeled. And I'm really excited about seeing, okay, now we've got processes in the platform. What sort of cool stuff can we do with connecting those to workflows and actual execution and actual, like the question was asked earlier, around process metrics and some of that. I'm very into closing the loop. So both the value stream mapping and the business process modeling are targeted towards May release of the EA tool. This is a subset of our full roadmap, but just focusing again here in bold, these are relevant for business architecture, the value stream mapping. I put some other items on here that are also loosely relevant to business architecture, like being able to color code things and expanding into full Archimate notation support, along with Archimate import and export, being able to take photos of like screenshots or PowerPoints and turn those into models, and also being able to go from model to text, so that you're getting it out of the visual and you're getting that into a textual format. These are all things that I think are relevant to business architecture, but our main immediate focus is right here in Q2 of 2025. So I just want to close out real quickly. I've got this picture on the right here from the Open Group, from their IT for IT standard, and I've always kind of loved it because it talks about, up here is industry independent, vendor independent architectures, value streams, end-to-end overviews of things. And this picture particularly was for an IT product, digital product value stream. But it's relevant here because we've got all these different standards. We got TOGAF, we've got Archimate, we've got the BizBock meta model, the OMG version of that Bill showed. We can go down the list of all the standards and all of that. They're all mostly playing above the line here. They're talking like, here's a pattern for how to do things. And one of the places where ServiceNow's at is we're here at this level 4 where we got to take all of those different things that are going on out there and figure out how to turn that into a tool. And sometimes they disagree with one another. Sometimes they use the same terms differently. Bill mentioned 3 different definitions of value streams in his part of the talk. This is a really critical thing for us to get right, because what it enables is you to do your implementation architecture, the level 5. If we can successfully synthesize all the things that are going on in the industry with all those standards, turn it into tool and data and workflow, that's going to make your life better. So on the left here, this is just some of my personal wish list as an architect of 25-ish years at solution and enterprise and business levels. Man, I want extensive standard and reference model adoption on the platform. I want bringing in the reference architectures as artifacts on platform. I want customer-facing usage data, best practices, examples, and knowledge bases. What's made me able to successfully adopt a tool has been having great real-world examples and counter examples and usage guidelines and all of that stuff. I'm not a modeler to just diagram and document, here's something, and it's a document and it goes off and it's just a picture. I'm a modeler because models are analytical tools that help me and other people, and in our new world, AI, make decisions better and remove toil. So that's a huge passion of mine. I'm not going to settle for diagram as the end of the world. I want this to help be a decision-making tool. I'm going to focus a lot on cross-silo workflows to other business processes, that both on and off the Now platform. That's where I think our strength is. Part of that, making that successful, is we got to be able to not just have, again, standalone diagrams tied to individual data elements, but we've got to be able to flow between business levels and application levels and technology levels and information levels. And we got to have that pervasively cross-linked. And one of the holy grails of modeling and architecture has been sort of closing the loop of, I've got a design with all my design elements. I want to turn that into working software systems or business functions. I want to get operational data from those working systems, and I want to bring that right back into architecture. So as I'm starting this new job in EA, this is the stuff that I'm kind of passionate about. And I'm so excited that our first set of capabilities here are business architecture related, because this is the foundation for everything. I'm looking very excited to look at how we keep expanding that in the EA platform. So with that, that's the end of our session today with 3 minutes to spare. I'll stick around for a little bit more if there are questions on the meeting chat. As always, we will be publishing these presentations and the recording out to the forum, community forum. Yeah, thank you for attending, and this has been a fun session. Thank you, William, for your excellent presentation on business architecture.
Thank you.
So Charlie, you said you are sticking around?
Yeah, I'll stick around for just a couple minutes.
I'll put it in the chat, but I'll tell you what I'm writing. Last year, first of all, I've been on this business architecture journey for about 5 years. It has changed how I solution. You know, we've been solutioning from the IT side all this time. It is a bit of a shift. I mean, it is a huge shift. But once you're there, I will not go back to the way that I was solutioning before. So I had sent over, I've mapped the 10 domains. I just needed to confirm that these are the tables that we're going to use in ServiceNow. So I'll forward you that email because I hadn't really heard back from anybody yet. But I wanted to see, okay, are we, and you're right on the different standards. I decided to align with the guild and then fill in the gaps because the guild is working with the open group. The guild is working with the other organizations, so I don't have to. So I have picked up, they are initiatives, they are stakeholders. And so where I have to adjust for customers, I do. But for the most part, I am aligning to how the guild has taught us. There's a new version that just came out a couple days ago, so we're out on 14, and I'm looking forward to it. So I said alignment of, well, once I stop talking, I'll put it in so you have it as reference. So I was able to map them all to the tables within ServiceNow. And then what I've done is I'm currently working on, I'm actually the PM for a HR project. I have mapped all of the HR apps. So I have the value stream, the value stages, the business processes, business capabilities. And so then I went into, you know, our demo instance to put it in and ran into the snag with the business process. It's like, ooh, I could put the title in, but I'm going to have to figure out where to put the steps for right now. And that's fine. I mean,
Yeah, what you're right into there is we will never be a literal one-to-one implementation of any of the standards. We align really closely with IT for IT. We participate in that, but we're not a literal implementation of IT for IT. Same thing on the business architectures guilds meta model here. So the you didn't quite ask a question, but the area you're exploring here is exactly the area that I was talking about with the level 4 and level 5 on that diagram. Is we've got to put our stake in the ground about, like, here's the data we're actually going to have, and it should align maybe loosely, if not literally, to the various standards. And then you're going to have to figure out how to implement that along with us and your implementation partners in your org for your business processes. Every system works that way, but we're not going to be a direct literal implementation there, I think, ever. We're going to be
Can I
able
comment?
agreed. Absolutely.
Can I comment? Quick point way back to what you were saying. Customer is under stakeholder. It's a kind of stakeholder. So it's not that the guild is not missing customer. It's a major focus, right? It's an external stakeholder. It's defined in our stakeholder map. There's a lot of clarity around customer. I just want to get that out there. The second thing is we are working, the guild is a member of Open Group and OMG. We have realigned the 4 core domains. We've realigned TOGAF version 10 to align to the 4 core domains. The BACM is the standard for business architecture at the OMG. There's an effort now going on separately in a task force I co-chair to align to the IT architecture. I will also say that Archimate has slowly but surely begun to follow us along the way. Their introduction of capability a few years ago, their more recent introduction of value stream, they are going to get there. So, you know, these are not all equal, right? It's not the guild is this and Open Group is this and Archimate is that, right? These are things that are slowly coalescing around the guild meta model and the guild concept. Why? Because of all the things that Etta was saying about 5 minutes ago. So, you know, it's not either this or that. right? People are gravitating closer and closer to the guild meta model over time.
Oh, absolutely. Because you got to pick one to start with. I can't go into the
Yeah.
customer with like all these 5 things. And to be honest, from when I was doing the shift, the guild makes it easy to understand. I can't be up in the clouds like, okay, can we get a version for the people down here on Earth? I had so maybe that's the reason why I did the shift. I don't know, but I'm here and wanting to spread the word. So when ServiceNow decided to get into the space, I was doing the happy dance.
I just want to throw it out there, sorry.
Well, thank you, Etta. I think we're going to go ahead and shut down the meeting. Thank you, everybody. Have a good week, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thanks, Charles.